Should you write every day? I feel like there's a lot of writing advice when it comes to this particular topic. And it's kind of a difficult one to talk about. In some of my research over the years, taking a peek at things and looking at how others are responding to this question, it always feels like people have a really definitive position. And I understand that. It's easier to say yay or nay than it is to actually dive into the meat of a situation, to understand that it's fairly complicated. The reality is that whether you should write every day or whether you should binge write for a whole day once a month is probably going to depend most on the kind of person that you are. And that's, of course, not even taking into effect what kinds of other influences and contexts and inhibitions are coming at you as a human being. Are you married? Do you have a full-time job? Are you in school? Do you have children? Do you live in a place where finding time to actually sit down and write means getting up before everyone else or staying up after everyone else? Those kinds of elements are all going to throw their own wrench into the works of things. And it's going to make all of those pieces a little bit more difficult for some random dude on the internet to give you advice for. So instead, what I'm going to do is talk through a couple of the strategies that have either worked for me or worked for people in my writing groups, because I think that's more of a practical way to look at this. So I'll start with myself. I am a person who thrives on routines. So for me, striving to write every day was hands down the best thing I could do, because it's easy for me to have that as kind of the mental checkbox before I go to bed. When I build a habit, when I build a routine, there's some element inside me that gets excited whenever I finish that component. This goes for a lot of things, but ironically, it works really well for my creative stuff. Producing videos here on YouTube. I have another art channel where I do a lot of world building and how to draw content. I'll link that down below if you're interested in it at all. But the fact that I've got those relegated to specific intervals in which they need to come out makes it much more satisfying for me to achieve. And my writing, which I started really digging into about 3 years ago, I started with the goal of just writing every day. And that quickly became write 100 words a day. That became 250, 500, and eventually I landed on 1,000 words a day as being my goal. For me, this takes about 45 minutes, and I also count outlining and world building as the words for that. So if I sit down, and I did this last week, because I hit a point in the story where I've got to have a whole bunch of things planned. We're kind of coming into the final battle at the last book of the trilogy I'm working on. And I needed to know basic military strategy for what's going on. I'm going to do a lot of research on the editing pass, but for now I just needed to have a basic idea. Well, that's going to unfold over the course of 3, 5, 7 chapters. And so what that meant is I needed to sit down for 2 or 3 days and just outline, figure out which characters are going to be where, what the plan's going to be, what are the emotional ups and downs. And I count that as my word count. Now, I suppose you could be a little bit more stringent and go only words count that are actually a part of that particular component of the story. And I get it. I've done that in the past. But the reality is each of these systems is going to be built for you specifically as an individual. For me, having that checkbox, knowing that my goal is just to get 1,000 words done every single day, means that I write almost every day. When I get to the end of a year, I can look back on my spreadsheets because, yes, of course, when I have routines like this, I track everything via spreadsheet. I can see what my average word count was because it's all built in and it calculates. I can see how many days I skipped. I can see how many days I went far over. And for me, all of that just lends itself to this beautiful routine and habit. Now, I have people in my writing group that idea is anathema to everything they do. So if you're hearing me say this, yes, I write every day. I skip maybe 4 to 7 days a year. I try not even to skip holidays, though sometimes I'll try to work ahead and do that. I track everything I do literally down to the word. You can look at my spreadsheets and I track completion rates on each of the chapters I finish, the average amount of words. I have a running algorithm that calculates about how many words more I need to finish, which then gives me a predicted due date for when I'm going to finish the novel. If that sounds like way too much, if that sounds overwhelming, then you're not built like me. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you're a different kind of writer. But if you are built like me, you might find those things are beneficial. And I would recommend looking into them. I'd recommend trying that, trying to give yourself just a small amount of words that you're going to go through each day and then try to accomplish it and see how that works for you. Because it's worked so well for me, my recommendation, I think, for most people would be try to come up with a certain amount of days each week you think you could write. 5 or 6 is probably what I would start with, and give yourself a very small word count, maybe 250 words. Something that hypothetically you could get done in about half an hour, maybe an hour if you needed to steal that time. And I would just try that and document over the course of a couple weeks. Realize it's probably going to take 3 or 4 weeks for you to fully get into that routine. So don't hold yourself super accountable right at first. But that's what I would try. But I've got a lot of friends and I've got people in my writing group that would just destroy all the joy. They need to write when they really feel inspired, when they feel motivated and they get into it. And often they will write for a far longer time than I do. My normal is about 45 minutes to an hour every single day, generally after my wife and my daughter have gone to sleep. I will sit down and I always come with the ability to put on my headphones, and I so often get to the end of the day and I've just had so much noise that I sit in the silence and I write. But again, I don't think there's any right method there. If you want to drown things out, I think that's totally fine. I would encourage you, probably don't try to watch television or a movie or a TV show while you're writing, because your subconscious mind kind of gets distracted by the additional details. I only listen to music I know so well that I could literally fall asleep listening to it. If I put on a song I haven't heard before, my brain will attach to it. And so there's all these weird little things that I do just to try to make it so I can actually accomplish what I want to. And that's the goal here, is that I want to get my writing done. I want to make sure it happens at regularity. So if that works for you, lovely. I think that if you can write every day, it's a great strategy to try. But by and large, you're going to have to figure out what kind of writer you are. My issue with, and I think the temptation to push people toward writing every day, is if you don't write every day, if you don't have some kind of schedule, it can sometimes be hard to make sure it actually happens. If you commit to writing every day and you try to, even if you fail sometimes and you find it difficult, the overwhelming likelihood is that you are going to actually write something. Whereas if you resist building a schedule or a calendar of any kind or any kind of routine, there's a good chance that you go a month or two without writing anything. And in that case, maybe joining a local writing group would be good. The writing group that I work with is, I say work with, but I attend. It's called Shut Up and Write, and they meet here in Colorado at so many different locations, but I think it goes throughout the entire country and might even be international as well. You could probably look them up online and see if you could find a local chapter, but my guess is that there's a whole bunch of writing groups like this. Maybe there's Discord servers that do these kinds of things as well. A little bit of accountability just helps. I know for a lot of people on our Thursday group, that's the day they write. They show up and they write on Thursday nights with us, and that's it. That's what they get in the week. That's 1 hour. But even if that's the case for you, where it's just 1 hour a week, it means every week you're chipping away at that thing. And if you're writing 1,000 words in that hour because you're thinking about things over the course of the year, that does mean that you have 52,000 words by the end of the year. And I think a lot of kind of beginner novels, when you're starting to write the first time, you're probably looking somewhere between 70 and 100,000 words. So if you're chipping away just at that 1 hour a week, you're looking at about a year and a quarter, year and a half to finish a novel. That ain't so bad. Unless you're going to 100,000 words, in which case you're going to need 2 years. My novels are they've ballooned. They've gotten much bigger. I plan on about 150,000 words for each one, and they're each at about 250,000. The last one's probably going to be closer to 300,000. So if I'm not putting in 1,000 words a day, then it's just going to take years and years and years to finish these things. So do you need to write every day? No. But whatever you can commit to doing on a regular basis, I think will be beneficial. And it just comes down to the things that you think about, the things that you plan for, the things that you schedule tend to happen. And they're things that you prioritize. Even if you are the kind of person that's very much a pantser, you just want to fly by the seat of your pants and you don't want to plan anything, you just want to get inspired and jump in. Sometimes that works. And if you are frustrated, if that's the way you want to work and you're frustrated because you're not accomplishing what you want to with your novel, then I would encourage you to try something different. And I think that's what this comes down to. What I had been trying to do, just lean on, inspiration and whatnot for 20 years, didn't do anything. So I shifted my strategy. I was held accountable by the fact that I showed up to a group and I had to have something to write each week that I showed up. And then that just led to starting to think about it ahead of time. And then that started writing ahead of time. Slowly, I built up the habit. And now I've got somewhere in the neighborhood of about 800,000 words written in the past 3 years, which is so exciting. And I'm just like, oh, it feels so good to like finally get the stories moving and down on paper. If something terrible happens to me now, like my daughter will still have these, probably not very good, but she'll have these novels that I wrote. And that's a satisfying thing. These stories have been floating around in my head for a long time. So if you're in a similar boat, you've got stories you want to tell, you want to write a book, you've been chewing on this for a long time, then whatever you have been doing that you haven't been satisfied with, try something different. And if that comes down to writing every day, then give it a go. It works really well for me, but I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I know that this is not a totally definitive answer, but I think that it would be disingenuous to give a totally definitive answer because we're all very, very different. And, at some point we'll probably get into neurodivergence and writers and building languages and world building and all that stuff at some point. And there will be some intriguing components to that because I do think that influences whether you're the kind of person who writes every day or you just write in huge spurts. But that is not for this episode. So, all right, I'm going to get out of here. Good luck with your writing and world building. Thanks for listening.